Have you ever noticed sometimes it's hard to keep the balance in life? Sometimes your life just wants to spin out of control. I mean, how do you do it? People use a variety of different methods. For some, like Moses, it's their faith. Moses, you see, he lived many, many years ago, and he had a really strong faith, and that's how he kept in balance. He was born in a time that if you wanted to learn something, you had to pay for it. And he wanted to learn. He was the son of Mendelssohn. He was a poor scribe, but even though he was a poor scribe, he did everything he could to educate his son. He took his son to the local rabbi, and the rabbi also helped Mendel learn. Moses learned. He taught Moses about French and Greek. I know what you're thinking. This is a different type of Moses than what you're thinking of. This particular Moses was a Jewish German philosopher. And when he was really, really young, he had a disease. It caused him curvature of the spine. Now, actually, when he was very young, this disease gave him a hump on his back. And because of his short stature, not really what you call handsome. But he loved everybody and everything. And he loved to learn, and he was mostly self-taught. And at that time, he thought that anyone could come to religious, logical truths if they thought it clearly themselves. He believed that it was okay to have differences in religion, and he respected each and every religion. This was really forward-thinking for a man in the 1700s. And because he was a forward thinker and because he studied hard, he found himself moving away from his home and getting a job as a teacher. He worked for a merchant, a silk salesman. The man made a fortune with silk, and he needed to have his children taught. And Moses taught his children. And soon, Moses became his bookkeeper, and eventually his partner. And by the time Moses was in his 30s, he wasn't poor anymore. As a matter of fact, he was well-to-do, respected, educated, what most Jewish mothers would call a good catch. And back in that day, in the 1700s, it was the German custom for the father to arrange the marriage. Arrange, he did. He got all the family together, everybody arrived to meet. She's laughing because this still happens in parts of Maine as well. So this merchant he was a Hamburg merchant, a merchant in Hamburg, Germany, that is, not a Hamburg merchant. And he had written Moses because he wanted to arrange a wedding for his daughter. Well, Moses had heard a lot about from her. You know, she had blonde hair, blue eyes. She was quite a looker, and she was a thinker and educated, which for him was perfect. I mean, he was already falling in love with her, and he hadn't even met her. She heard about Moses as well. She had heard all the great things about Moses, and she was excited to see him until he came across the lawn. Remember his back? She took one look and broke into tears. She couldn't even look him in the eye. It was a hideous disfigurement, and she couldn't believe that her father had done this. She ran off up to her room. Well, Moses had fallen in love with her. And he knew he wasn't going to be in Hamburg much longer. He really needed to do something. He got all the courage together that he could, and went up to her room, and to talk to her, because if she found him repulsive, how could he permit her? You know, he had to change that. So he went up to her room, and she couldn't even look him in the eye. She was so beautiful, it saddened him that she was repulsed. Finally, after many attempts at conversation, he said, do you believe that marriages are made in heaven? And not even looking at him, she said, yes, I do. Do you? Oh, yes, I do, Moses said. Yes, when I was born, the Lord pointed out my wife to me. And he said, this will be your match, this will be your mate. However, the Lord said, I'm sorry, but she will have a hump on her back. But she will be beautiful and soft. And Moses, he said, I looked at the Lord and I said, Lord, how could you do that? How could you give this woman this awful thing on her back? Please, Lord, give me the hump and give her beauty. And at that moment, Farmington raised her head, and she looked into the eyes of Moses as if she felt some deep, deep memory. And she reached out her hand, and she became, later, his devoted wife. And they were married. And they lived very happily thereafter, except there's more to this story. For you see, because of this match, and because of her courage and his courage, and them both accepting and having a little tolerance for people that are different, they had children. Right? Mothers say smart, we all know that. They had children. And out of their children, they had 2 bankers, an engineer, and 3 women who, for their time in Germany, were the women's movement. Yeah, they really brought out things that Jewish women at that time wouldn't have normally done. They opened the way so that could happen. And this couple, Farmington and Moses, had grandchildren. They had, of their grandchildren, they had a romantic painter and a musician. You see, back then, the way names were passed down, Mendelssohn's son took his father's name, and he became son of Mendel, or Moses Mendelssohn. His grandson was Felix Mendelssohn, who created that beautiful piece that Jackie played for us as I was younger. And thanks to love and tolerance and understanding, tonight you've been able to enjoy that music because of the match made in heaven.